And I remember getting to Legion Field 5 hours before kickoff. So I loved it. I lived for it. Anything they asked of me, I did.
That Alabama's choice not to bring you back was not health related, correct? Welcome to Beat Everyone. I am Ben Flanagan. I'm here with longtime Alabama football writer Michael Casagrande, and we're here now with our new miniseries, The Golden Age. And we're sitting here with the legendary, the one and only, the longtime voice of the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, Eli Gold. Eli, how you doing?
I am well. Great to be here with you guys, and I enjoy seeing you in your new home here. So let's christen it well with the start of the series.
Yeah, let's get it started. You know, Eli, you've been through legendary calls throughout your whole career, more than you could probably name. Let's go back to the very end before we get to the beginning. Let's go back to Jordan-Hare Stadium, Thanksgiving weekend last year. Just take us to that moment. What was that call like, the Gravedigger play?
Well, at that point, obviously, I didn't know that was going to be my final call as the voice of the Crimson Tide. I had not been given the heave-ho at that point, so I didn't have that on my mind. But it was a very difficult call to make because, as you gentlemen know, the press facilities at Auburn now are in the other end zone. So I figured, and as people also who know me know that math were, sixth grade math were the 5 longest years of my life. I'm trying to figure it out, but I figure we were about 40 or so yards behind the near end zone. Then you had 100 yards. That makes it 140 yards. Then you had, another 9 yards so we were 150 yards basically from where the play was going to take place, if it took place. So I just made a point of noting who went wide in all these different positions. Because again, we were behind the other end zone. And then the play unfolded. And of course, Milore had tons of time, and he made more time just to make sure everybody had a chance to get downfield into the end zone. So I'll be very honest with you. God gave me, with the help of an optometrist, 4 eyes, but I used one eye to watch the play, and one eye was peeking at a TV monitor because I was a long way away, and I didn't want to get be obscured from the play by a defender or whatever it was. So I'm looking kind of like this, going back and forth, and then he went up, made the grab, and we made the call. Thankfully, it was a good call that I had. It didn't screw it up or anything, and that was the final call of my Alabama career. When the touchdown to Bond gave Alabama the win in the Iron Bowl.
What's the emotion like in that press box in that moment?
Well, you feel good, but if you watch the video from that in-booth camera that we had, everybody else was celebrating and high-fiving. I was just sitting there, taking it all in and describing what I saw. That's something I have been trained to do over all these years now. If I go to a hockey game, I don't celebrate when a goal is scored. Even if I'm in the stands, I tend to just point at it. I don't know why. And the same thing with this. You're clearly doing the Alabama broadcast, and you're clearly excited that the Tide won, but I don't start yelling and screaming and sounding like a doofus on the air. We've all heard that where, some kid starts going nuts and the Sports Center anchors make fun of him because he sounds like a crazy guy going nuts. I don't want to do that. So I disregard everything that's going on around me in the booth. And I just, in this case, stared all the way to the far corner, down the sideline into the end zone. And that's what I stayed zeroed in on.
Yeah, you don't want to be on SportsCenter for the wrong reasons.
No,
yeah,
not at all.
That's probably
And
a
the
good
chances
call.
of me being on for something positive on the gridiron is not going to happen. So this was, I'm always cognizant of that. I am not so much SportsCenter per se, but I am cognizant that these calls will live on forever, whether it's at the Bryant Museum, however it might live on. It'll be heard on, ESPN radio, on Fox Sports Radio, and this one and that one, throughout the next coming weeks. You just don't want to screw it up if you can help it.
Yeah, not to mention social media immediately, right?
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And everybody's quick to criticize. In our line of work, you have and maybe in yours too, I don't know.
Indeed.
But in our line of work, we have a saying, those who can, do. Those who can't, criticize. And I don't need people criticizing me, especially if it's because of something I screwed up. So I just stayed zeroed in on the play and took in all that was going on and wrapped things up. So that's how I did it.
Amazing call to end essentially in your career on, right? At Alabama,
Yeah.
Like unbelievable play. You said you didn't know that in that moment, that would be your final call essentially for Alabama. When did you know that was your final call?
Definitively,
Yes.
When I was on a Zoom meeting with the university, with our athletic director there and with our boss, that's when I was told that we have chosen to go in a different direction. Now, what the heck does that mean? I don't know. Can I ask why? Well, we've just chosen to go in a different direction. What are you going to do? I loved it. One thing, they will never be able to take away the memories. They will never be able to take away the friendships. That's something that I've got forever. Would I love to still be doing the games? Yes. With no disrespect to Jacksonville State, who was quick to pick me up and become part of their crew. But, sure, I'd like to. I loved it. I lived for it. But no, when they told me it was time for them to go in a different direction, that's an easy way out of making a change without having to tell the guy why they made a change.
It's been a few months now since all that went down. Has your perspective on any of this changed or evolved through the months?
I don't know. I'm sure it may impact me a little bit come football season, but I've been blessed. I was concerned. Number one, I am 70. I'm a young 70, but I am 70 nevertheless. Is it going to be easy for me to find work? Because I needed to find work. I'm not independently wealthy. But in the meantime, JSU called me. Then the Nashville Cats of the Arena Football League called me. And now just last week, a group who I will not name at the moment, but the deal is done. They called me to do their game of the week. They are one of the major syndicated deals here, because my Jacksonville State football will only be a couple, 3 games, because I'm looking strictly at the television for them. I am not going to, wander into radio. They've got a guy, Mike Parrish, who's been there forever, and that's his job. I would never, ever consider stepping into his territory. But this other network, which is one of the top syndicators in the country, last year they did major games, including an Alabama game. So I will do their games of the week, with the exception of a couple when I just turned down Nebraska, Illinois. I don't know how major it is, but they had asked me to do it, but that was one of the days that I had a Jacksonville State game to do. But, so I'm going to do that. I'll be busy. I love what I do, and that's all I can ask for.
Eli, you've talked about this since, the decision was made several times, but I do think it's important to clarify aspects of it if Alabama fans haven't heard it yet. You have reiterated that you're as healthy as a horse.
As a horse.
And that Alabama's choice not to bring you back was not health related, correct?
Correct.
So what was your response to that?
I had no response. I just had no response. I made it clear again that they knew that I was healthy and ready to go. And, the whole thing was kind of strange. We want you to do only home games because, we don't know if you're healthy enough to travel. And then in the next sentence, they said, oh, and by the way, you're going to do the Iron Bowl too, which was a road game. And I said, well, where I live, I could get to Auburn as quickly as I can get to Starkville. Why don't I go to Starkville too? Well, no. There were just all sorts of conflicting messages. I don't know what happened. I really don't. I don't know what happened. At one point, I was told that my work last year was not up to par, was not up to standards. And I listened to every broadcast that I did last year. When I got home, I get the tapes and I listened to them. And I guarantee you, if I felt that I wasn't doing the job for these listeners out here, if I felt that I was embarrassing myself, the listeners, or the university, I would have stepped down. I was not going to be one of those guys who went on too long. But I felt I had done a good job. I thought, I had done a good job, especially after being off for 22 months or whatever it was. I was satisfied with the work I did. And obviously, I guess the university was not, or somebody was not. I don't know who made the ultimate call, but that's behind me now. I'm now working elsewhere, and I'm very happy. And thank the Lord, I'm healthy. And all the friendships, like I said, and the people I've met, we're still talking and having a good time. So, I can't complain. To find out exactly what the university thought, you'd have to call and talk to somebody at the university. But I'm not going to do that.
You said you'd go back and listen to the calls and you'd listen to your broadcast. What would you listen for? What was the game film study for you?
It was basically, was I accurate? I really paid attention to the latter portion of the third quarters and the fourth quarters. Did I still have the energy that I had when I signed on at 1:00? Did I still have that energy going at 4:00? That's important. And I did have the energy, I left it, as they say, I left it all on the table there. I didn't take any energy back home with me when the day was done. I did a good job in that regard. There were probably some calls I could have done better, but I dare say, without the benefit of a backspace key, which
keeps me in business,
which you guys have, I don't have a backspace key. When the word comes out of my mouth and disappears into the microphone, it's gone. I can't bring it back. So without benefit of a backspace key, I was really pleased with the way things went.
Did you have a number of years that you were hoping to continue in that Alabama booth?
Yeah, I planned to go on forever. I really did. I didn't have any set number. No, I had done 36 years, and I count the 1 year that I was sick in there, but I did 36 years. And I always said, as long as I'm healthy and able to do it, and as long as the university wants me, I'll stay. I wasn't shooting for Jack Crystal's 50 years or this. I didn't think like that. I just said, yeah, I've got a home, I'll stay. As it turned out, the university was ready for me to step aside.
Is it true, though? Didn't you say before that you said, okay, I'll do it for one more year, right?
I did come back. They offered me they told me what was going down. And I said, well, I don't like that. They had said, I said, but if instead of me doing, just the home games for another year, I said, let me do every game in 2023. Let me do every game. And then I'll quietly walk off into the sunset. And not that I wanted to offer that, but I did. I realized that, maybe the time had come. I don't know. I said, let me do one more full season. And as I also knew that it was going to be a very, very good football team. So, I didn't know that you'd be going back out to the Rose Bowl and doing all this, but I knew it was going to be a good team. I wanted to be part of that. The university said, thank you, no, to paraphrase Charles Emerson Winchester III, thank you, no. And I just, then they talked about me doing things. We'll let you do the A-Day game this year, the 2024 A-Day game. Then we'll give you a 3-minute segment on pregame. It's a 3-hour show. We'll give you 3 minutes on pregame to do a historic look back. If Alabama's playing Tennessee, well, I would pull highlights from old Tennessee games and do that. We'll give you, complimentary tickets. We'll give you a good parking pass because my walking is getting a whole heck of a lot better, but it's still not perfect. So they said, we'll give you your same parking spot right up against the stadium. And the only thing is, you really can't talk about what transpired. We're just going to keep it among ourselves. And they said, what will you say if a newspaper guy comes up to you or a TV guy and says, what happened? And I said, well, my answer will be verbatim. Exactly what you've told me. The university told me they've chosen to go in a different direction. Well, you really can't say that. I said, well, why not? That's what you told me. Well, you just can't say that. It won't look good for the university. I said, well, that's what you said. Well, you can't say that. And then I realized that I wasn't going to be able to tell the truth. So I just said, look, keep your tickets, keep your parking, keep your anything else you want to give me, keep your 3 minutes every pregame show, and I'm gone. And we're going to take a day away from you. I said, that's fine, goodbye. And so that's how it played out. I did indeed walk away from that confining offer because I didn't want to have to lie to you. I didn't want to have to lie to you. I didn't have to want to lie to you. I just didn't want to lie. So that was that.
Eli, here's what I don't understand, right? I mean, you've been the voice of Alabama for almost 40 years. You're a fixture. You're part of the tradition. Fans love you. You're part of the game day experience for so many people. So even if it were true, he's not up to par or whatever, hasn't Eli Gold earned the grace to find that again based on what you had gone through?
I thought so, but that's not my decision. That wasn't my decision. I worked for Learfield Communications and the university. And I actually got paid by Learfield. I have never gotten a check for a broadcast from the University of Alabama. All of us, we work for the rights holder, in this case, Learfield Communications. I thought I deserved better. I thought I deserved some more consideration after 36 years. But clearly that sentiment wasn't shared. And here we are.
And one more follow-up there about the 1-year deal and the 1-year counter that you basically had. I don't understand why they say no to that, right? Like if you essentially have a farewell tour, right? You have one more season to do it full time, to do it your way. Somebody who's been doing it for 4 decades. What explanation, if any, did they give you?
None. They just said no.
Cut and dry.
Cut and dry. And, that's when they came back and said, well, you can do A-Day, you can do this, you can do these little piddly things. But, it's you'd have to ask the question of them. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, I have moved on. I'm still disappointed. I'm still saddened. But the way I have been treated and the way my wife has been treated by the people at Jacksonville State has eased all the pain and then some. The folks at JSU have been so wonderful. Athletic Director Greg Seitz, all of his people, the university president, everyone has been so nice, so wonderful that I'm beyond the Alabama disappointments now. They have treated me so well. I love doing baseball for them. We'll announce here shortly that I'll do some basketball and some football. We're driving home. My wife and I are driving home from Nashville after doing an Arena Football League broadcast on Mother's Day. And Claudette's phone goes off, and it's a text message from Greg Seitz, the athletic director at JSU, wishing Claudette a happy Mother's Day. I've never seen that in my life. They're just wonderful, wonderful people. And I'm thrilled to be there, along with everybody else that they have in place. Mike Parrish has done their broadcasts forever. He's there, and it's his gig on the radio. I have been welcomed, though, and I can't thank them enough. And life goes on. Life goes on. And as I tell Claudette all the time, I said in 30, 35 years, it ain't going to matter. We'll all be pushing up daisies at that point.
On that note, we're going to take a break, Eli. More with Beat Everyone in the Golden Age here with Eli Gold after this. Hey, welcome back. I'm Ben Flanagan, and this is Michael Casagrande. You're listening to and watching Beat Everyone. We're here with the one and only Eli Gold for the Golden Age, one of many episodes to come. Michael?
Yeah, Eli, so we've been talking about the departure, and just wondering, what have you heard from fans? You're out in the community. What have they said to you when you've seen them out there?
I've heard nothing but great stuff. And of course, people who don't have anything good to say don't have, they don't necessarily have the guts to come up to you and say that to your face anyway. So the folks that I have heard from, we'll miss you. We'll miss you. Hate the decision. We'll miss you. And I appreciate that. It's nice to know that you've had an impact after 4 decades of doing something. But I'm just it's been wonderful. The people have been great, and it's time to move on to my next assignments and cherish truly the memories and the friendships that I've made over the years.
On that note, I mean, we went to lunch with you one time, and you had multiple people coming up to you and saying hi. And what's it like being Eli Gold, going out in public? How often do you get people coming up and
all the time? Thankfully, all the time. And you know what? I personally, and I learned this from Kenny Stabler, I never turn down a chance to chat with somebody, a chance to give them an autograph, take a picture, whatever it is they want. If they're kind enough to come up to me and ask for a moment of my time, and if they're kind enough to sacrifice a moment of their time to visit with me, that's the greatest honor you can get. That is the absolute greatest honor that I can get from the audience. And I will never say no. I've been with Snake in airports where it should have taken us, 10 minutes to get from the gate to baggage claim. And it was a 45-minute extravaganza because he'd be stopping every 3 steps to sign autographs and what have you. I don't charge for autograph. I don't do any of that stuff. If you're kind enough to come up to me and just want to meet me and say hello, even at dinner, people say, I apologize for interrupting your dinner. I said, that's all right. Don't worry about it. And it is all right, for me, not for everybody. Some guys hate that. Some guys.
It's the worst. I get it all the time. People are always.
Yeah. But I
don't.
I hear you. But if they're kind enough to come up to me, then I am more than ready to spend a few moments with them. And that's just, so yes, fans come up all the time. and I'm thrilled with that. I really am. The ones I always laugh at, they in a nice way, they'll stare at me, you know, and they'll say, and they'll point, and they'll, uh, and I'll say, yeah, that's me.
You just hit him with a touchdown, Alabama. And
No, I never do that off the air.
really,
I never use that line off the air because it sounds bad. If I do it right here on the air, on our podcast, it sounds weak. There's no 100,000 people yelling and screaming behind you. There's not that built-in release of energy as you get to the crescendo of a touchdown. It just sounds terrible. And the guy goes home and says, Ethel, I saw Eli Gold today. It didn't sound like it. Yeah. So I just don't do that. I don't say touchdown Alabama in an on-air way. But people are great. If they want to talk to me, I'll talk. I have no problem at all.
Eli, about those fans who love you and have always been fans of yours, in terms of you being part of the game day experience for most of their lives, and in many cases, all of their lives.
Yeah.
They probably I know that they shared a lot of frustration with what happened, right? Like your exit from Alabama. What would you tell them? Like, what would your advice be to those fans who are frustrated? They're lifelong Alabama fans, but they're lifelong Eli Gold fans too.
You say nothing is forever. What am I going to do? I am not going to tell them to stop being fans of the Tide. I'm not like that. I want to see Alabama win. I do. But I can't tell people how to live their lives. You just do what you want. I appreciate if you're going to miss me. I do. If you want to hear me, you can listen to Jacksonville State games and the other national games that I'm going to be doing. But, it's you just go about your life. But I thank those people profusely.
I want to ask you just quickly about Chris Stewart, because he's obviously going to be in the chair that you've occupied for a really long time. Y'all have been colleagues for a long time, had been colleagues for a long time. I guess what advice would you give for him or anybody else who would be sitting in that chair calling an institution like Alabama in the future?
Be yourself. Don't try to be the next Eli Gold, because Chris is not Eli Gold. Personality-wise, age-wise, experience-wise, we're altogether different. So Chris needs to be the first Chris Stewart. He doesn't need to be the next Eli Gold. And that's what I would tell to a guy who's taking over, the New York Yankees with John Sterling having retired. Don't try to be the next John Sterling. Be the first you, whoever you are, whoever the Yankees settle on.
You mentioned your final call earlier, right? The Gravedigger call.
Yeah.
What about your first call?
My first call, I couldn't tell you what it was, to be honest with you. I do remember the game. It was in 1989, the season opener at Legion Field against what we then called Memphis State University, now the University of Memphis. And I remember making a terrible mistake. And that was, in those days, we only had like a 20-minute pregame show or a 15-minute, not like the 3-hour extravaganza of today. And I remember getting to Legion Field 5 hours before kickoff. I didn't want to get caught in traffic.
You didn't?
No, I didn't. I didn't want there to be an accident on the road. I wanted to, this is my first game doing Alabama. So I got there 5 hours prior to kickoff. And I went up to the booth, put out my papers, sat down, and began to just get insanely nervous. I would think of things I wanted to write down. I have a list of notes that I keep by my side in case I have to fill for a moment or so. There's always something there. Well, I was trying to write, and I was shaking. My hand was literally just shaking. I couldn't, I was slapping my hand to calm down. I was totally out of control with nerves. Then, of course, everybody else started filing in. And then right next to the radio booth at Legion Field is where the middle section for the writers began. And in this first row, first seat, was Paul Finebaum.
Heard of him?
You've heard of him, yeah. And he, even in those days, he had already established a bit of a reputation. And he was just there, and he was looking at me, and I was looking at him, and, hi, how are you? But I was a bag of nerves. I didn't know if I would make it to game number 2, let alone season number 2. I didn't know if I'd make it to game number 2. And, as it turned out, I made it to, season 36. But, I know Alabama won, which was commonplace against Memphis State back in those days, as the school was known at that point. But, it was a day full of nerves. I remember that.
Did you just look over at Paul Finebaum and think that guy has no future whatsoever?
No, I couldn't do that. Because I was doing a talk show on WERC in Birmingham. And on Tuesdays, I used to fly down to Daytona Beach every single Tuesday of the year. Every Tuesday of the year, I'd fly to Daytona Beach to host NASCAR Live, which was NASCAR's weekly radio call-in show on the Motor Racing Network. We had some 600 affiliates. I mean, it was big, especially when NASCAR was at its heyday in the middle of that meteoric rise in popularity. Well, I had to get out of my Tuesday talk show, the third hour of the Tuesday talk show that I did here in Birmingham. I was able to do the first 2 hours from Daytona. So the first 2 hours of Calling All Sports, I originated, but the third hour of Calling All Sports was head-to-head with NASCAR Live. So I had to do something with that third hour. And I had hired Paul Finebaum. And the name of the show, I turned that third hour into Fussing with Finebaum. And
this is where we are today.
And
You can thank Eli Gold.
I was going to say, so you made Paul Finebaum.
I didn't make him, but I opened up the door for the electronic media. He had already made himself in the print world. But yes, I gave him his first on-air opportunities on Tuesdays for an hour doing sports talk on Fussing with Finebaum, which was the third hour of Calling All Sports. And so I knew Paul. But the fact that he was there, and I knew the impact and the reach he had and so on, it was, that whole day was just, I was nervous as can be. And, then you go home and you ask people, how did I do? And you know that your friends aren't going to say you sucked, even if I did. But
you've got better friends than me.
Well, maybe so.
No.
But I just didn't, I was a bag of nerves. But, I had good support from Burt Bank, the late Burt Bank, who was the executive producer of the network, and Jerry Duncan and John Forney, who I had replaced. He was very supportive. Doug Layton was my color man. So those guys helped me along, because if they had turned on me, it would have been very, very difficult to survive.
And that was Bill Curry's final season, correct? At Alabama?
Not his final, was it?
Okay. Was it? Okay.
I don't honestly remember.
But your relationship with Bill Curry at all in your first season?
We had a wonderful relationship.
What was he like?
He was a great guy. I told people, I didn't concern myself with the politics of the business. That's one of the things that has contributed to my heretofore longevity. I would never go into the athletic director's office and say, psst, psst, you can tell me, I won't tell anybody. I'd never do that. I didn't, was somebody throwing a brick through his window? Was he not? I never asked Bill about that. To this day, I've never asked Bill. He was just a kind, knowledgeable gentleman who gave me a good, solid working environment. And, so I had a good time working with Bill Curry. And of course, as we know, he went on to a broadcasting career. So he was able to formulate thoughts and spit them out in 40-second sound bites, which really worked so very well for our pregame shows and stuff like that. It was a broadcaster interviewing a coach who was going to become a broadcaster. So I enjoyed my time. There was nobody that I didn't enjoy my time with. That was their turf, man. I was the conduit of information between that man and the fans. And I was not going to, blow that. Was I a mainline journalist? No. I mean, there were so many questions left unasked that if Michael hadn't asked them, he would have been fired or slapped around. I didn't ask them, but I was the mouth, I was the mouthpiece for the university. So I wasn't mainline media, if you know what I'm saying. So I got along well with everybody, every single coach with whom I've worked. One or two of them, one of them lied to me, but Coach Franchione did that to everybody. When, it was time for him I said, "Are you leaving?" "No, I'm not leaving." And I went back to the hotel and I ran into Ron Franklin. Remember Ron, the old voice of ESPN's college football? And I said, he goes, "What are you hearing?" I said, "I just came from taping the pregame show." And I said, "Franchione told me he's not going anywhere." Ron said, "I wouldn't use that if I were you." I said, "Really?" I said, "It's in his voice. It's his mouth, not me paraphrasing." He said, "Well, you do what you need to do." He said, "But I just talked to R.C. Slocum and yada, 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 and the deal's done." And of course, Ron was right. Coach Fran just, chose to say what he needed to say at that point. But no, I enjoyed working with every coach because I know what I don't know. I know what I don't know. And when you listen to these guys talk about football, they're talking at a level way up here. You got to ask them, all right, now in English, what the hell did that mean? I know what I don't know, and they were a font of information for me. So I had a wonderful relationship with all of them.
Eli, I've just got one more question about this, and we're
Sure.
obviously going to move on from it because you've clarified enough, I think, at this point, and we really appreciate that. My question to you, whether it's about your career at Alabama, whether it's about the final year or even the final days, is there anything looking back you would have done differently?
Not really. Not really. I did a good job. I built a relationship with the listeners. I built a relationship with the university. There was nothing they asked me to do. Not an appearance that they asked me to make that I didn't do. Anything they asked of me, I did. The fans, the same thing. The alums, the same thing. No, there's nothing I would have done differently. I would have wished for a different outcome. I'm not going to lie to you. I wished I could have stayed there for another 10, 15 years. They chose not to have that happen. But again, they cannot and will not take away the memories and the friendships of 36 years. So no, there's nothing I would have done differently.
Eli, thank you so much for this. It's been fascinating.
Sure.
And we'll talk again soon, obviously.
Definitely.
But this has been the first edition of The Golden Age on Beat Everyone. If you have a question for Eli, leave us a voicemail at 205-523-4809. Subscribe to Beat Everyone on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And for Michael Casagrande, I'm Ben Flanagan. Thank you so much for listening and watching.